Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. I love the Tuesday poll question. And you're saying, Michael, we're tired of hearing you say that. No, I really mean it. And it won't be obvious why I'm asking it until I explain, which I'm excited to do. Agree or disagree, it's time for Ukraine to join NATO and for the United States to invoke Article 5 and go to war with Russia. What? Yeah, I'll explain why I'm asking this in just a moment because it will not be obvious. It will not be self-evident. So it's Tuesday. Thank you to my friends at Parks Casino. Thursday night, I'm sorry to hedge. I expect to be there. Many of you have reached out for me like, hey, are you going to be there on Thursday night when Joe Ellis does her comedy routine? What I know for sure is that Joe will be a guest on the Thursday program. And then Thursday night, she will be an opening act. This is hysterical at Parks Casino. The headliner is Ian Lara, who has an HBO comedy special called Romantic Comedy, streaming on HBO Max. The man of a thousand voices, Joe Conklin, such a funny Philly guy, also a part of the act. You get so much for $25. $25. When I was there for the last comedy night that I attended, I saw 5 different acts, all in the span of an hour. That's the other thing. There's like no BS. They get to it. And your first drink is on the house. So be there at 8 to watch Joe Ellis and make sure you're ordering your tickets in advance. I don't want you to get closed out. Parkscasino.com/entertainment, wherever you are in the Northeast. You know Joe's story, former editor of Smerconish.com, 16-year Virginia National Guard, Black Hawk helicopter pilot, now turned comedian, having had a breakthrough moment with Tony Hinchcliffe on Kill Tony. You can't make this up. What is next in Joe's life? I don't know, but I want to watch. So go to parkscasino.com/entertainment, click on the comedy tab, and you'll see it's Thursday night. This Thursday night, 2 nights away. You got to be 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay. The Monday poll question was this: should President Trump commit to deploying U.S. troops alongside those of European nations to provide security to Ukraine once hostilities have ended? We had 36,473 votes yesterday, and 79.1% said yes. Again, taking the most militaristic answer when the question is Ukraine, right? Anytime I've asked this question, it seems like the most hawkish response wins. And so I thought, I'm going to go all in. I am going to go all in and test the hypothesis. What if we just cut to the chase and say, it's time to go to war with Russia? Maya Baird, who is our newsletter editor, at my request, did something really cool and painstaking. And that is, I said, Maya, go back and check all the Ukraine-related poll questions since the invasion. Now, there's a footnote, there's a caveat, and that is that the invasion was February 4, 2022. February 4, 2022. When we get to February, we're going to meet the 4-year anniversary. So, but it was that date, that morning, Russian forces attacked from multiple directions across the Russian border. And the caveat is, I think because we changed our poll question platform, I can't go to February of 2022. I can go to October. I can go to October 11 and come all the way forward and tell you that on 39 different occasions since the 11th of October, again, recognizing that was 8 months after the invasion, I have all the poll questions in front of me. And to my eye, the most hawkish answer wins in all 38 of the 39. And it's really interesting because I have no idea how this is going to play out today, which makes it fun. But for example, if I go back to October 11, 2022, should NATO and the US arm Ukraine with long-range missiles? 78.71% say yes. 10-15-22. This is interesting. If Putin launches a tactical nuke, remember we were worried about that? How should U.S. and NATO respond? 74.45% say with conventional weapons. October of 2022. Should the U.S. deploy Patriot missiles? 88% say yes. December of 2022. With regard to U.S. support for Ukraine, which is more necessary now? Restraint or replenishment? 92.42%. You see the pattern? Say replenishment. January 2023. Should the West give Ukraine everything it needs to win? 91.13% say yes. February of 2023. Should the U.S. military aid Ukraine continue to grow swiftly, incrementally, or not at all? 75% say swiftly. Some of these are not directly applicable, even though they concern the news of the day and they were military. March 18, 2023. Is the military support being given to Ukraine by U.S. and NATO? Oh, I love this because this has been a constant theme of my conversations with Admiral Stavridis. My observation that it seems like we were always giving Ukraine enough to keep the Russian bear at bay, but not to really piss off Putin. So, for example, March 18, 2023, is the military support being given to Ukraine by U.S. and NATO intended to defend against Russia or actually win the war? 70.79% say defend, not win. Relative to today's poll question, the one example where it's not the most militaristic response that won, but it was close. April 12, 2023. Should U.S. military special forces be on the ground right now in Ukraine? Should our special forces be on the ground in Ukraine? 58%, 58.12% said no. 41.88% said yes. I'm going to run through all of these on radio today, but I just wanted to give you a good taste. Time and time again, it is the answer of the most hawkish response that gets the majority vote, including, as I say, yesterday's poll question. Should President Trump commit to deploying U.S. troops alongside those of European nations to provide security to Ukraine once hostilities have ended? 79.03% say yes. Doesn't look like Trump wants to do that. I paid close attention to the meeting yesterday where all the Western allies came to the White House. Trump stepped out. He called Putin. There's optimism now that the next meeting will be Putin as well as Zelensky. We'll see where it goes. Some are saying it's time to implement the very serious consequences that President Trump told us would come if there weren't a ceasefire. So I'm mindful of all of that taking place. And then I ask you this, agree or disagree, it is time for Ukraine to join NATO and for the United States to invoke Article 5 and go to war with Russia. By the way, based on something that I heard Ambassador Bolton say yesterday on CNN, I pulled Article 5. I misunderstood it. And Ambassador Bolton was making the point that he thinks most everybody misunderstands Article 5. Article 5 doesn't absolutely obligate a NATO member to come to defense of another NATO member. It's the language is not that obligatory. So it's not as if Ukraine's a member of NATO and therefore everybody's in if NATO is under attack. Nevertheless, for the purpose of the poll question, I'm asking, should we, that's why I wrote it this way, should we invoke it and go to war with Russia? Get it over with. And what would be that argument, by the way? I'm not advocating for it. I'm pushing you. I'm pushing every one of you who has voted in all of these poll questions for the last 3.5 years to say, okay, enough with should we give them this, should we give them that, should we this, should we just have at it with Russia? And I am really curious to see how many say yes. Is that going to be a majority view? Because if it is, I think tomorrow I got to come back and say, are you ready for your sons and daughters, nieces and nephews, grandsons, granddaughters to have boots on the ground? Or are we all just a bunch of keyboard warriors? What would be the argument? The argument, I guess, would be that this conflict is not something isolated just to Ukraine and Russia. It's a direct challenge to a post-World War II order, and that, I'm spitballing here, but that international law and collective security demand that the aggressor, Russia, be confronted once and for all, and that it would also allow the United States to reestablish itself as sort of the global leader standing against authoritarianism. And that if Putin is allowed to get away with it in Ukraine, then he's going to go after the Baltic states and those that used to comprise the old USSR, the Soviet Union, as he seeks to reconstitute that dream. Something along those lines. As I say, I'm just winging it. I'm just winging it. It's not, I am not in the majority on this, but I can't wait to see whether majority rule says this is the way it ought to go. Now you know the backstory. When I saw the result yesterday, I'm like, ooh, wait a minute. I've been talking about the hawkish responses. Can I actually look at them? And Maya pulled them, and there was that one exception when I asked about special forces. And I wish I had the window of February to October. I'm sure I asked a lot of poll questions, which would mean, more than 50, maybe even 60 poll questions on Ukraine in the last 3.5 years. No surprise on that. But when I saw the result yesterday, like, yeah, we ought to have boots on the ground to enforce any type of an armistice, then okay, why don't we just go to war with Russia right now? We'll see. We will see. We will see. We will see. Go vote at Smerconish.com on the Tuesday poll question. Watch my presentation, my summary of the poll question each and every day on YouTube. And when you do, please like and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe, and set yourself up for notifications. Okay? Today's going to be really interesting. This is a really interesting poll question. I want to see, I know how I'm voting. I don't want us to go to war with Russia, especially when there are peace negotiations that are taking place. I want to see how many who respond to my questions, this progressive audience, right? Every time it's not Ukraine, it's like a very progressive anti-Trump vote. Oh yeah? How about in this case? We shall see. Go vote. See ya.